The homeless man helped two abandoned kids. But when he met their mother, Jack Cooper trudged along the dimly lit streets of downtown Detroit, his worn boots scuffing against the cracked pavement. At 35, he cut a forlorn figure, shoulders hunched beneath a threadbare coat, his once handsome face now gaunt and weathered by years of hardship. Life hadn't been kind to Jack. Once a promising mechanic with dreams of owning his own garage, a series of misfortunes had left him jobless and nearly homeless. A workplace accident had crushed his right hand, ending his career. The medical bills had drained his savings, and the ensuing depression had cost him his marriage. Now he scraped by on odd jobs and the kindness of the local shelter. Despite his circumstances, Jack clung to a core of decency and compassion. He volunteered at the shelter when he could, sharing what little he had with those even less fortunate. His eyes, a deep brown that had once sparkled with ambition, now held a quiet resignation tinged with a stubborn flicker of hope. On this chilly autumn evening, Jack was returning from another failed job interview. The sun had long since set, and a light drizzle fell, matching his gloomy mood. As he passed by a narrow alley between two abandoned buildings, a sound caught his attention. A soft whimper that seemed out of place in the urban decay. Jack paused, peering into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just the usual detritus of a forgotten corner of the city. But then, a slight movement caught his eye. There, huddled behind a stack of discarded pallets, were two small figures. His heart racing, Jack approached cautiously. As he drew closer, he realized what he was seeing. Two children, a boy and a girl, no more than 5 or 6 years old. They were dirty, thin, and clearly terrified. "Hey there," Jack said softly, crouching down to their level. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The children shrank back, eyes wide with fear. The boy, slightly older, pulled his sister closer protectively. Jack's mind raced. What were two young children doing alone in this part of town? Where were their parents? He knew he couldn't leave them here. The nights were getting colder, and this was no place for kids. "It's all right," he soothed, holding out his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name's Jack. Can you tell me your names?" Slowly, the boy's grip on his sister loosened. "I'm Tommy," he whispered. "This is Sarah." As Jack coaxed more information from the children, he felt a mixture of concern and determination growing within him. These kids needed help, and despite his own dire circumstances, he knew he had to do something. Little did Jack know that his decision to help these abandoned children would set in motion a chain of events that would not only change his life, but uncover a mystery that would shake him to his core. As the drizzle turned into a steady rain, Jack knew he had to get the children to safety. "How about we go somewhere warm and dry?" he suggested gently. "There's a shelter not far from here. We can get you some food and figure out what to do next." Tommy hesitated, clearly torn between fear of a stranger and the need to protect his sister from the cold and wet. Finally, he nodded, helping Sarah to her feet. Jack led the children through the darkening streets, his mind whirling with questions. As they walked, he tried to gather more information. "Do you live around here?" he asked casually. Tommy shook his head. "We used to live in a big house with a yard," he said softly. "But then Mommy got sick and we had to move to a small apartment." "And where's your mom now?" Jack probed gently. At this, Sarah burst into tears. "Mommy left us," she sobbed. "She said she had to go away to get better, but she didn't come back." Jack felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. What kind of mother abandons her children in the streets? He pushed down his anger, focusing instead on comforting the distraught children. They reached the shelter just as the rain intensified. Martha, the kindly older woman who ran the place, took one look at the bedraggled trio and ushered them inside. "Jack Cooper, what have you gotten yourself into now?" she asked, but her tone was more concerned than accusatory. As Martha bustled about, getting towels and dry clothes for the children, Jack explained the situation in hushed tones. Martha's face grew grave as she listened. "We should call the police," she said. "These poor dears need to be properly looked after." But as she reached for the phone, Tommy's eyes widened in panic. "No, no police," he cried. "Mommy said we can't trust them. She said they'd take us away and we'd never see her again." Jack and Martha exchanged worried glances. What had these children been through to instill such fear of authorities? "Okay, no police for now," Jack soothed. "How about we get you some food and a place to sleep, and we can figure things out in the morning?" As the children ate their first proper meal in days, Jack noticed something poking out of Sarah's pocket. A crumpled piece of paper. "What's that, Sarah?" he asked gently. Sarah hesitated, then pulled out the paper. "Mommy gave it to us before she left," she said. "She said it was important and we should keep it safe." With trembling hands, Jack unfolded the paper. It was a letter, written in a shaky hand. "My darling children, I'm so sorry for leaving you like this. Please know that I love you more than anything in this world, but I have to go away for a while to fix the mess I've made. It's not safe for you to be with me right now. If you're reading this, it means you've found someone to help you. Trust them, but be careful. The people after me might come for you too. Remember the lullaby I used to sing? The answer is in the song. When it's safe, I'll come find you. All my love, Mom." Jack read the letter twice, his mind reeling. What kind of trouble was this woman in? And what did she mean about people coming after her children? He looked up to find Tommy and Sarah watching him intently. "Do you know what your mom meant about the lullaby?" he asked. Tommy nodded slowly. "She used to sing us a special song every night. Said it was our secret." As Tommy began to hum a haunting melody, Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He recognized the tune. It was an old folk song, but with altered lyrics. And hidden in those lyrics, he realized with a start, were numbers, coordinates. Suddenly, Jack understood. This wasn't just a case of child abandonment. This was something much bigger, much more dangerous. And now, he was right in the middle of it. As he tucked the exhausted children into bed, Jack made a decision. He couldn't turn them over to the authorities, not without knowing the full story. Whatever trouble their mother was in, these kids were now his responsibility. With a mixture of determination and fear, Jack realized his life had just become infinitely more complicated. But looking at the peaceful faces of Tommy and Sarah, he knew he had no choice. He had to protect these children and uncover the truth about their mother, no matter the cost. The next morning, Jack woke early, his mind still churning with the events of the previous night. As he watched Tommy and Sarah sleep, peaceful despite their ordeal, he knew he had to act quickly to unravel the mystery surrounding their mother. He carefully retrieved the letter from his pocket and studied it again. The lullaby, he was certain, was key to understanding what had happened. He needed to hear it in full. When the children woke, Jack gently coaxed Tommy to sing the entire song. As the boy's small voice filled the room, Jack frantically scribbled down the lyrics, his heart racing as he recognized the hidden message within. The song spoke of a treasure buried where the old oak stands, and secrets hidden in the abandoned factory by the river. But most intriguingly, it mentioned a false queen who wears a stolen crown. As Jack deciphered the coordinates hidden in the melody, a chill ran down his spine. They pointed to a location just outside the city, an old industrial area that had been abandoned for years. But before he could process this information, Martha burst into the room, her face pale with shock. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling, "you need to see this." She held out her phone, displaying a news article that made Jack's blood run cold. The headline read, "Tech billionaire's wife missing, children presumed kidnapped." And there, staring back at him from the screen, were the faces of Tommy and Sarah. Jack felt the room spin around him. The children he had rescued from the streets weren't just any abandoned kids. They were the heirs to one of the largest tech fortunes in the country. As he read through the article, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The children's father, Maxwell Stone, was a controversial figure in the tech world, known for his cutthroat business practices and rumors of unethical experiments. His wife, Elizabeth, had vanished 3 days ago, shortly after filing for divorce. The article hinted at a bitter custody battle and allegations of corporate espionage. Jack's mind raced. Was Elizabeth the false queen mentioned in the lullaby? Had she discovered something about her husband's business dealings that put her and the children in danger? Is that why she had gone into hiding, leaving her children with only a cryptic message for protection? He looked at Tommy and Sarah, now fully awake and watching him with wide, fearful eyes. They had clearly recognized themselves in the news story. "It's okay," Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You're safe here. Can you tell me more about what happened before your mom left you?" Tommy hesitated, then spoke in a small voice. "Mommy was crying a lot. She said Daddy had done bad things, that he wasn't who we thought he was. She said we had to hide for a while, but then she got a phone call and she looked really scared. That's when she left us in the alley." Sarah chimed in, her lower lip trembling. "She said she'd come back for us when it was safe. Is Mommy in trouble?" Jack felt a surge of protectiveness mixed with a growing sense of dread. Whatever Elizabeth Stone had uncovered, it was big enough to make her abandon her children and go into hiding. And now, Jack realized, he was caught in the middle of something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. As he looked at the trusting faces of Tommy and Sarah, Jack knew he had a choice to make. He could turn the children over to the authorities and walk away, or he could follow the clues Elizabeth had left behind and try to uncover the truth. With a deep breath, Jack made his decision. Whatever trouble Elizabeth Stone was in, whatever secrets she was trying to protect, he was now part of this story. And he would do whatever it took to keep these children safe and reunite them with their mother. Little did he know that this decision would plunge him into a world of corporate intrigue, high-stakes technology, and danger beyond anything he had ever faced before. Jack's mind raced as he considered his options. The sensible thing would be to contact the authorities immediately. After all, he was an unemployed man with a criminal record, however minor. Who would believe he had the children's best interests at heart? But as he looked at Tommy and Sarah, he knew he couldn't bring himself to hand them over to a system that might separate them or, worse, return them to a potentially dangerous situation with their father. The fear in their eyes when they spoke of Maxwell Stone told Jack all he needed to know. "All right," he said finally, his voice firm with resolve. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to follow your mother's clues and try to find her. But we have to be very careful. Can you two be brave for me?" The children nodded solemnly, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. Jack turned to Martha, who had been watching the exchange with growing concern. "Martha, I need your help. Can you cover for us for a few days? If anyone comes asking, you haven't seen us." Martha hesitated, her brow furrowed with worry. "Jack, are you sure about this? You could be getting into some serious trouble." "I know," Jack replied, "but I can't abandon these kids. Something big is going on, and they need someone on their side." After a moment, Martha nodded. "All right, but you be careful, Jack Cooper, and you call me if you need anything, you hear?" With Martha's reluctant blessing, Jack set about preparing for their journey. He gathered what supplies he could, some food, a change of clothes for the kids, and an old backpack he filled with essentials. He also borrowed Martha's ancient flip phone, knowing they'd need a way to communicate. As they prepared to leave the shelter, Jack knelt down to the children's level. "Remember, we have to be very quiet and very careful. If anyone asks, I'm your uncle, okay? Can you remember that?" Tommy and Sarah nodded, their small faces serious. Jack felt a pang in his heart. These kids had already been through so much, and their ordeal was far from over. They slipped out of the shelter in the early morning light, making their way to the bus station. Jack's meager savings would be enough for tickets to the outskirts of town, close to the coordinates hidden in the lullaby. As they boarded the bus, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He scanned the other passengers nervously, but saw no one suspicious. Still, he couldn't relax. The stakes were too high. The consequences of Jack's decision began to unfold almost immediately. As the bus pulled away from the station, he spotted a police car pulling up, 2 officers getting out and looking around intently. Jack's heart raced, but he forced himself to remain calm for the children's sake. The journey to the outskirts of town was tense. Every time the bus stopped, Jack expected to see police boarding, coming to take the children away. But somehow, they made it to their destination without incident. As they disembarked, Jack oriented himself using the map on Martha's phone. The coordinates led them to an area of abandoned warehouses, the remnants of the city's industrial past. "Is this where Mommy is?" Sarah asked, her small hand clutching Jack's tightly. "I'm not sure, sweetheart," Jack replied honestly, "but this is where the clues led us. We'll find her, I promise." As they approached the specified location, Jack's senses were on high alert. The abandoned warehouse loomed before them, its windows dark and empty, paint peeling from its weathered exterior. "Stay close," Jack whispered to Tommy and Sarah, who huddled near him, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anticipation. As they neared the entrance, Jack noticed something odd, a small symbol etched into the rusted metal of the door. It matched a doodle he had seen Sarah absent-mindedly drawing earlier. "Sarah," he said softly, "do you recognize this symbol?" The little girl nodded, her face lighting up. "That's Mommy's special mark. She used to draw it for us all the time." Jack's heart raced. They were on the right track. Carefully, he pushed the door open, wincing at the loud creak that echoed through the empty space. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of old machinery and forgotten crates. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that penetrated the gloom through broken windows. Jack led the children carefully through the debris, following a trail of subtle markings that matched the symbol on the door. Suddenly, Tommy froze, tugging on Jack's sleeve. "I hear something," he whispered. Jack strained his ears and caught it too, a faint humming sound coming from deeper within the warehouse. Cautiously, they moved towards the noise. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves face to face with a surprising sight. A small, high-tech computer setup stood incongruously among the rusty machinery. The screens glowed with lines of code and what looked like security camera feeds. "What is all this?" Jack murmured, more to himself than the children. Before anyone could respond, a voice came from behind them, causing them all to jump. "I was hoping you'd figure it out." They whirled around to see a woman emerging from the shadows. Her blonde hair was cut short, and she wore nondescript clothing, but there was no mistaking the violet eyes that matched Tommy and Sarah's. "Mommy?" the children cried in unison, rushing towards her. Elizabeth Stone knelt down, enveloping her children in a tight embrace. Over their shoulders, her eyes met Jack's, filled with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. "Thank you for bringing them here," she said, "but I'm afraid you've all walked into something very dangerous." Jack's mind reeled. He had found the children's mother, but it was clear that this was far from over. As Elizabeth ushered them towards the computer setup, glancing nervously at the security feeds, Jack realized that his decision to help these children had led him into a web of intrigue far more complex and perilous than he could have imagined. The consequences of his choice were still unfolding, and as Elizabeth began to explain the reason for her disappearance, Jack understood that their ordeal was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. While Jack, Tommy, and Sarah were making their way to the abandoned warehouse, another drama was unfolding across town in the gleaming offices of Stone Tech Industries. Maxwell Stone, tech billionaire and father to Tommy and Sarah, paced his expansive office, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Across from him sat Detective Laura Chen, her expression impassive as she watched the agitated CEO. "How hard can it be to find a woman and 2 children?" Stone snapped, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "I'm paying you good money, detective. I expect results." Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mr. Stone, we're doing everything we can, but your wife seems to have planned her disappearance very carefully, and with all due respect, your reluctance to disclose certain information is hindering our investigation." Stone whirled on her, his eyes flashing. "I've told you everything relevant to finding my family. The rest is corporate business, not police business." "And yet," Chen pressed, "your wife filed for divorce just days before disappearing with your children. She also attempted to contact the FBI with allegations of corporate espionage and illegal experimentation. Don't you think that might be relevant?" For a moment, Stone's composure slipped, revealing a flicker of something that looked almost like fear. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual arrogant sneer. "Elizabeth has always had an overactive imagination," he said dismissively. "She's clearly suffering some kind of breakdown. All the more reason to find her quickly." Chen stood, gathering her notes. "We'll continue our search, Mr. Stone, but I want to be clear. If we find any evidence of criminal activity in your company, we will pursue it." As the detective left, Stone slumped into his chair, his facade crumbling. He pressed a button on his desk intercom. "Send in Graves," he ordered. Moments later, a tall, severe-looking man entered the office. "You called, sir?" Stone leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. Elizabeth's trail has gone cold. The police are useless. I need you to use our other resources. Find them, Graves, whatever it takes. Graves nodded, his expression unchanging. And if we locate them, sir, what then? Stone's eyes hardened. Bring my children home. As for Elizabeth, make sure she can't cause any more trouble, permanently. As Graves left to carry out his grim orders, Stone turned to gaze out over the city. His empire was at stake, and he would do anything to protect it, even if it meant sacrificing the woman he had once loved. Meanwhile, in a small apartment across town, Detective Chen sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by case files. Something about the Stone case didn't add up, and she was determined to uncover the truth. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Found something. Meet at the usual place. Chen's pulse quickened. Her confidential informant within Stone Tech had come through. Perhaps now she would get the answers she needed to crack this case wide open. As she grabbed her jacket and headed out, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the verge of uncovering something big. Something that could shake the foundations of the tech world and beyond. Little did she know that her investigation was about to intersect with the journey of a poor man and two lost children, setting in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. Back in the warehouse, Elizabeth Stone huddled with Jack and her children around the makeshift computer station. The initial joy of reunion had given way to a tense atmosphere as Elizabeth began to explain the gravity of their situation. I never wanted to leave you, she said, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at Tommy and Sarah. But I had to protect you from what your father was doing. Jack listened intently as Elizabeth unfolded a tale of corporate greed, unethical experiments, and a technological breakthrough that could change the world, for better or worse. She had discovered that Maxwell was using their children's unique genetic makeup as a basis for his experiments, putting them at risk. I couldn't let him turn our babies into lab rats, Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. So I ran, and I've been working ever since to gather enough evidence to stop him. As she spoke, Jack found himself studying Elizabeth. He saw the same determination in her eyes that he had noticed in Tommy and Sarah. Despite the designer clothes that were now wrinkled and stained, and the short, hastily dyed hair, there was no mistaking the fierce intelligence and love for her children that radiated from her. Tommy and Sarah clung to their mother, their earlier fear giving way to a sense of security in her presence. Jack watched as Elizabeth stroked their hair, whispering reassurances, and felt a pang of something he couldn't quite identify. Longing? Envy? Or perhaps just a deep-seated desire to protect this small family unit. So what's the plan now? Jack asked, breaking the moment of quiet. We can't stay here forever. Elizabeth looked up at him, gratitude shining in her eyes. You're right, and I can't thank you enough for what you've done, Jack. You put yourself at risk for my children when you didn't have to. Jack shrugged, feeling a flush creep up his neck. Anyone would have done the same. No, Elizabeth said firmly, reaching out to touch his arm. They wouldn't have. You're a good man, Jack Cooper. There was a moment of connection between them, an understanding that transcended their vastly different backgrounds. They were two people caught in an extraordinary situation, united by their desire to protect Tommy and Sarah. As Elizabeth outlined her plan to expose Maxwell's illegal activities, Jack found himself becoming more and more invested. This wasn't just about returning the children to their mother anymore. It was about righting a wrong, about standing up against corporate greed and unethical practices. I'll need your help, Elizabeth said, looking at Jack intently. I know it's asking a lot, but... I'm in, Jack interrupted, surprising himself with his conviction. Whatever you need. Elizabeth's relief was palpable. Thank you, she breathed. Then turning to the children, she said, and you two have been so brave. I promise, once this is all over, we'll be a family again. A real family. As they worked together over the next few hours, formulating plans and sifting through data, Jack felt a shift in the dynamic between them all. Tommy and Sarah, initially shy and fearful around him, now included him in their conversations and games during breaks. They showed him little tricks Elizabeth had taught them, secret codes and playful ciphers that now took on a new significance in light of their situation. Elizabeth, too, began to rely on Jack more and more. She valued his street smarts and practical approach to problems, often turning to him for input on their plans. Jack found himself opening up about his own past, sharing stories of his life before and after his accident. As night fell and the children curled up to sleep in a makeshift bed of old blankets, Jack and Elizabeth sat side by side, watching over them. "You know," Elizabeth said softly, "when I left them in that alley, I prayed that someone kind would find them. I never imagined." She trailed off, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Jack felt a lump form in his throat. "I'm glad it was me," he said simply. In the dim light of the computer screens, surrounded by the quiet breathing of the sleeping children, Jack and Elizabeth shared a moment of quiet understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bound by a connection forged in the crucible of this shared ordeal. As they turned back to their work, Jack realized that in helping this family, he had found something he thought he'd lost forever: a sense of purpose, and just maybe, a place where he belonged. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Jack and Elizabeth worked tirelessly, piecing together the evidence needed to expose Maxwell Stone's illegal activities. Tommy and Sarah helped where they could, their young minds often providing unexpected insights that proved invaluable. As they neared completion of their task, the atmosphere in the warehouse grew tense with anticipation. They were so close to their goal, but the danger was far from over. It was Tommy who first noticed something was wrong. "Jack," he said, tugging on the man's sleeve and pointing at one of the security camera feeds. "There's a car outside. It wasn't there before." Jack's blood ran cold as he saw the black SUV parked just out of sight of the warehouse entrance. He exchanged a worried glance with Elizabeth, who immediately began shutting down their systems. "We need to go," she said urgently. "Now." But before they could gather their things, the sound of the warehouse door being forced open echoed through the cavernous space. Heavy footsteps approached their hiding spot. "Take the children and run," Jack whispered to Elizabeth. "I'll hold them off." Elizabeth shook her head fiercely. "We're in this together," she insisted. As the footsteps drew nearer, Jack made a split-second decision. He grabbed a nearby pipe and positioned himself at the entrance to their makeshift command center. The first man to round the corner was built like a linebacker, his suit barely containing his muscular frame. Jack swung the pipe with all his might, catching the man off guard and sending him sprawling. But more men followed, and Jack found himself overwhelmed. As he struggled against two attackers, he saw Elizabeth frantically typing at the computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Stop her," a familiar voice bellowed. Maxwell Stone himself strode into view, his face contorted with rage. Elizabeth's hand hovered over the enter key, her eyes meeting Maxwell's in a silent challenge. "It's over, Max," she said. "One press and everything goes public. All your dirty secrets exposed to the world." Maxwell's face paled. "You wouldn't dare. Think of what this will do to the children, to their future." "I'm thinking of their future," Elizabeth shot back. "A future free from your greed and experimentation." As Maxwell lunged towards Elizabeth, Jack broke free from his captors with a surge of adrenaline. He tackled Maxwell to the ground, yelling, "Do it now, Elizabeth." In the chaos that followed, several things happened at once. Elizabeth's finger came down on the enter key, sending their carefully gathered evidence to news outlets and law enforcement agencies worldwide. Tommy and Sarah, who had been hiding, emerged to stand defiantly by their mother's side. And the sound of police sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Maxwell, pinned beneath Jack, let out a roar of frustration. "You've ruined everything," he snarled. But his words were drowned out by the arrival of the police, led by Detective Chen. As officers swarmed the warehouse, Jack found himself being pulled off Maxwell and handcuffed, along with everyone else. As he was led away, Jack caught Elizabeth's eye. Despite the uncertainty of their situation, she managed a small smile of triumph. They had done it. The truth was out. But as the adrenaline of the moment faded, Jack realized that their ordeal was far from over. The real battle, legal, public, and personal, was just beginning. And he, a poor man with a criminal record, was now at the center of a storm that would shake the foundations of the tech world and beyond. The following weeks were a blur of police interrogations, legal meetings, and media frenzy. Jack, Elizabeth, and the children were thrust into the center of what quickly became the biggest corporate scandal of the decade. Maxwell Stone was arrested on multiple charges, including corporate espionage, illegal human experimentation, and child endangerment. Stone Tech Industries stock plummeted as the extent of Maxwell's crimes came to light. For Jack, the aftermath of their warehouse confrontation was a mixed bag. On one hand, he was hailed as a hero in the media, the down-on-his-luck everyman who helped bring down a corrupt billionaire. On the other hand, he found himself facing potential charges for his role in hiding the children and obstructing a police investigation. Elizabeth, true to her word, stood by Jack throughout the ordeal. She hired top-notch lawyers to represent him and publicly praised his bravery and integrity. Her own legal situation was complicated. While she was seen as a whistleblower, she also faced scrutiny for her methods in exposing Maxwell's crimes. As they sat in yet another meeting with their legal team, Jack couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The small conference room was a far cry from the abandoned warehouse, but he almost missed the simplicity of their hideout. "Mr. Cooper," one of the lawyers was saying, "we believe we can get the charges against you dropped. Your actions, while technically illegal, were clearly in the best interest of the children. Public opinion is on your side." Jack nodded absently, his mind elsewhere. He was thinking about Tommy and Sarah, currently staying with Elizabeth's sister, while the legal storm raged on. He missed them fiercely and worried about how they were coping with all the changes. Elizabeth seemed to sense his distraction. Under the table, she gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. Jack felt a warmth spread through him at the gesture. Despite everything, their connection had only grown stronger. "What about the children?" Jack asked, turning back to the lawyers. "How do we keep them out of this mess?" The lead lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Caroline, leaned forward. "That's our top priority, Mr. Cooper. We're pushing for all proceedings involving the children to be sealed. Their identities need to be protected." Elizabeth nodded firmly. "Good. They've been through enough already. I won't have them turned into media spectacles." As the meeting continued, Jack found himself increasingly involved in the discussions. His perspective as someone who had been on the ground, so to speak, proved valuable in strategizing their defense and public relations approach. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, a resolution began to take shape. Maxwell Stone's trial was set to begin, with Elizabeth as the key witness. The evidence she had gathered, combined with testimony from whistleblowers within Stone Tech Industries, painted a damning picture of corporate greed and unethical practices. Jack's charges were indeed dropped, thanks to the skillful maneuvering of their legal team and the public support he had garnered. However, he found that his newfound fame came with its own set of challenges. People recognized him on the street, reporters sought interviews, and he felt the weight of public scrutiny on his every move. Through it all, Jack's relationship with Elizabeth and the children deepened. When they were finally allowed to return to Elizabeth's care, Jack was there to help them settle into a new home, far from the media's prying eyes. He found himself becoming an integral part of their lives, a stable presence in the midst of ongoing turmoil. One evening, as Jack was helping Tommy with his homework, while Elizabeth prepared dinner and Sarah colored nearby, Elizabeth paused in the kitchen doorway, a soft smile on her face. "You know," she said, "we couldn't have gotten through this without you, Jack." Jack looked up, a warmth spreading through his chest. "I'm just glad I could help," he replied, his voice gruff with emotion. "It's more than that," Elizabeth insisted, moving to sit beside him on the couch. "You've become family to us." The word family hung in the air between them, full of promise and possibility. Jack felt a surge of hope, tempered by his own insecurities. "Elizabeth," he began hesitantly, I don't have much to offer. I'm still just a poor man with a troubled past." Elizabeth took his hand, her eyes serious. "You have everything to offer, Jack. Integrity, kindness, strength. That's worth more than any amount of money." As they sat there, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of family life, Jack realized that in helping these abandoned children, he had found something he never expected: a chance at happiness, at belonging. The road ahead was still uncertain. Maxwell's trial loomed, and with it the possibility of more public scrutiny. The long-term effects of the children's ordeal were yet to be fully understood. And Jack and Elizabeth's relationship, born in extraordinary circumstances, would need to find its footing in everyday life. But as Jack looked around at Tommy bent over his textbook, at Sarah's colorful drawings scattered on the coffee table, at Elizabeth's warm smile, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. The conflict wasn't fully resolved, but a new chapter was beginning. And for Jack Cooper, once a lonely, down-on-his-luck man, it was a chapter full of hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. The day of Maxwell Stone's trial arrival marked a turning point for Jack, Elizabeth, and the children. As they stood on the courthouse steps, a united front against the sea of reporters and curious onlookers, Jack felt a shift in the air, a sense that they were on the cusp of a new beginning. Elizabeth, poised and determined, gave a brief statement to the press. "We're here today not just to seek justice, but to ensure that corporations like Stone Tech Industries are held accountable for their actions. No one should be above the law, no matter how wealthy or powerful they may be." As they made their way into the courthouse, Jack felt Tommy's small hand slip into his. The boy looked up at him, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. "Will it be over after this, Jack?" he asked quietly. Jack squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Not right away, buddy, but this is a big step. We're moving forward." The trial itself was a grueling process. Day after day, Elizabeth took the stand, recounting the horrors she had uncovered at Stone Tech. Jack watched with a mixture of admiration and concern as she faced down Maxwell's high-powered lawyers, her resolve never wavering. When it was Jack's turn to testify, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. His story, of finding the children, of choosing to help them despite the risks, became a testament to the power of ordinary people to stand up against injustice. As the trial progressed, Jack and Elizabeth began to discuss their future in earnest. The media attention had made it clear that they couldn't simply return to their old lives. They needed a fresh start, away from the spotlight. "I've been thinking," Elizabeth said one evening, as they sat on the porch of their safe house, watching Tommy and Sarah play in the yard. "What if we used some of the settlement money to start a foundation, something to help other families affected by corporate wrongdoing?" Jack nodded slowly, the idea taking root in his mind. "We could make a real difference," he mused. "Help people who don't have the resources to fight back on their own." As they discussed the possibilities, Jack felt a sense of purpose settling over him. This was a chance not just to move on from the scandal, but to create something meaningful from their ordeal. The turning point had come. No longer were they simply reacting to events, trying to survive from one day to the next. Now they were charting a new course, one that would allow them to use their experiences to help others. As the sun set on another day of the trial, Jack looked at Elizabeth and the children, his heart full. Whatever the outcome of the trial, he knew that they had already won something precious, a new direction, a purpose, and most importantly, each other. As the trial neared its conclusion, Jack found himself reflecting on the incredible journey of the past year. Sitting in the quiet of the safe house's backyard, watching Tommy and Sarah play, he marveled at how much had changed, not just in his circumstances, but in himself. A year ago, he had been a broken man, drifting through life without purpose or hope. Now he was an integral part of a family, a key figure in a high-profile corporate scandal, and on the verge of starting a foundation that could help countless people. Jack thought about the man he had been. Bitter, isolated, afraid to connect with others for fear of being hurt again. That man seemed like a distant memory now. In its place was someone stronger, more open, more willing to take risks for what he believed in. He realized that finding Tommy and Sarah in that alley hadn't just changed the course of his life. It had fundamentally altered who he was as a person. Their trust in him, their resilience in the face of adversity, had awakened something in Jack that he thought had died long ago. The ability to care, to hope, to fight for something bigger than himself. Elizabeth, too, had undergone a profound transformation. Jack watched her now, tending to her small garden, her face peaceful despite the stress of the ongoing trial. The frightened woman who had abandoned her children in a desperate bid to protect them had become a fierce advocate for justice, a loving mother, and a partner Jack never thought he'd have. As if sensing his gaze, Elizabeth looked up and smiled at him. Jack felt his heart swell with emotion. Their relationship, born in the crucible of crisis, had deepened into something real and lasting. They had seen each other at their most vulnerable, their most desperate, and had chosen to stand together. Tommy and Sarah's growth was perhaps the most remarkable of all. Despite the trauma they had endured, the children showed an incredible resilience. They laughed more easily now, nightmares were becoming less frequent, and they had begun to thrive in their new school. Jack thought about the lessons this experience had taught him. He had learned the power of choosing compassion over indifference, of standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. He had discovered reserves of strength and courage he never knew he possessed. Most importantly, he had learned the transformative power of love and belonging. In opening his heart to these children and to Elizabeth, Jack had found a sense of purpose and joy he had thought was lost to him forever. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the yard, Jack stood up and joined his family. Elizabeth welcomed him with a warm smile, while Tommy and Sarah immediately tried to involve him in their game. In that moment, surrounded by the love of his newfound family, Jack felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. The road had been hard, and there were still challenges ahead, but he knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. The poor man who had once been so lost had found not just abandoned children, but a new life, a new purpose, and a love he never thought possible. As he looked towards the future, Jack Cooper felt ready for whatever came next, secure in the knowledge that he would face it with his family by his side. The gavel's sharp crack echoed through the courtroom, signaling the end of Maxwell Stone's trial. The verdict was read, guilty on all counts. As the courtroom erupted in a flurry of activity, Jack felt Elizabeth's hand tighten in his. They had done it. Justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by a sea of reporters and flashing cameras, Jack stood with Elizabeth and the children. But this time, instead of shrinking from the attention, they faced it together, united and strong. Elizabeth stepped forward to make a statement, her voice clear and resolute. Today marks not just the end of a trial, but the beginning of a new chapter. We're launching the Stone Cooper Foundation, dedicated to helping families affected by corporate wrongdoing and supporting ethical business practices. As she spoke, Jack felt a swell of pride. This foundation represented everything they had fought for: justice, compassion, and the power of ordinary people to make a difference. Later that evening, as they celebrated quietly at home, Jack looked around at his family, Tommy and Sarah, giggling over a board game, Elizabeth, her eyes shining with happiness and purpose. And he realized that the greatest shock of all wasn't discovering who the children's mother was, or uncovering a massive corporate scandal. It was discovering his own capacity for love, for courage, for change. The poor man who had once been so alone had found not just a family, but a calling. In helping these abandoned children, he had saved not just them, but himself. As Tommy called him over to join their game, Jack smiled. The future was bright, full of purpose and love, and he was ready for every moment of it. In the end, the shocking discovery wasn't about the mother at all. It was about the transformative power of compassion, the strength found in unity, and the hero that can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. Jack Cooper, once lost and alone, had found his way home.